So now we are recording for YouTube, and I'm really excited about this because this is a lesson that we all must be grateful for. Vulnerability. Have you ever felt so vulnerable that your true essence was shining so brightly, but you felt that it was shameful, or maybe it was like, swallow me earth right now? So we're going to talk about what keeps us from being vulnerable and the benefits and the prices of vulnerability. So fasten your seatbelts because we're going to learn and grow together. It's time to dance. Here we go.
The Lillian McDermott Show.
We love, we fear, bridges we burn, we make mistakes, then we live and learn. When life gets tough, and it seems like your best ain't good enough. If you're in need of hope, you know where I'll be right here. Right here, and when you need a friend, you can count on me. I'll be right here, waiting for
you. This is the place you can always turn to when you need a friend. The Lillian McDermott Show. To reach out to Lillian, visit her on the web at whenyouneedafriend.com. Now let's all learn together. Here's Lillian McDermott.
Hello, my listening friend and viewing friends on Facebook Live at Lillian's radio show. It's so nice we can meet each other on the air, on the internet, on this beautiful, best day ever. And for those of you who are new to the Lillian McDermott radio show classroom, please know that this is a safe place where you can go to when you need a friend. I just heard a chime in my ear and it completely threw me off. And so I'm wondering what that chime is all about. And but I'll continue moving on here because it's so important that in every aspect of our life, that we seek those things that we may not be so good at. How many of us like being vulnerable? Do you like being vulnerable? Have you ever been in a situation where you feel like you would rather just die right now because you feel exposed? What is it about vulnerability that causes us to feel exposed, embarrassed, humiliated, or even rejected? What is it about it? Sometimes it's easier to just ignore the situation, ignore that there's anything wrong, and act like there's nothing wrong, than to be the first one to say, I'm sorry. Then to be the first one to say, I love you. Then to be the first one to say, everything's going to be okay. I forgive you. Vulnerability takes on so many different layers from the facade. It takes it and removes it out. And so sometimes we would rather deal with discontentment than risk being vulnerable. Has that ever happened to you? Have you ever felt like you'd rather just be in a crappy relationship than to be the first one to say what needs to be said? I would love to hear from you. I would love to hear, am I the only one that feels that tears are so beautiful in others, but within me, they're a sign of weakness? Can you relate to feeling so naked that you'd rather be protected and have a shield over you than to risk vulnerability? If you've answered yes to any of these questions, it's time to share. It's time to tell people that this is the conversation we need to have. Maybe there's a person that you want to have this conversation with, but you're afraid to be vulnerable. Share it with them. Share that this class is on today, that this is the lesson that we're going to be discussing. Because vulnerability and risking vulnerability can help you mend a relationship beyond what you thought the relationship could be. And I know for me personally, there have been times where being in righteous anger was more comfortable than feeling exposed or feeling or wanting to be the vulnerable one. Why would that be? Well, today, that's what we're going to be talking about, vulnerability. Will we be able to get beyond it and learn a little bit more of who we are and how in vulnerability, that's when we're in our essence. So what's the opposite of that? What would be the opposite? What would keep us, what would keep you from vulnerability? It's possibly fear. And I'm not going to give it a certainly, because I am not an expert in vulnerability. I can tell you that the times that I have risked being vulnerable have been the times where I have benefited the most and at the same time risked the most. And it was that weighing or not even thinking about it and just doing it that allowed me to get to that level, to be able to forgive, to be able to do whatever it is that we knew needed to be done. So when I was choosing what the conversation was going to be about, I had experienced something that I got upset about. I spent a lot of time creating something beautiful for somebody that I love. And I thought that in my creating this, the person would be touched, they would feel loved, and they would love me back. They would share with me how grateful they were or how wonderful the job that I did. And somehow the expectation of what I wanted was not what it was supposed to be. So I'm getting a message. Is the audio okay? Can you guys all hear me? So if you're listening to this today, if you can just give me a thumbs up or say I can hear you, because I just got a text saying that there's something wrong with my audio. I just want to make sure. And Robert, do you want to check that out? And it could be that the person, let me check it real quick. Yep, I can hear. It could be that the person that just texted me that, their volume is low. So just make sure that you're hearing this. Okay, it's fine on my end, and I'm hoping that it's just the volume on your end. But if you can hear me, just give me the thumbs up and just let me know that you can hear me. And I got word from Robert, and I also checked that it's good. So as far as vulnerability goes, I was finished saying, because the attention span of a gnat here. I was waiting, and it wasn't so much what the other person didn't do, maybe it was my expectation. And when I was expecting this other person to be grateful, to be thankful, to be outwardly, that you could see that there was some form of gratitude, when that didn't happen, I became hurt. I became angry. I felt, man, why do I keep doing this? Why do I keep showing up much greater than that other person? When are they going to take the baton of love and appreciation? When are they going to meet my expectation of gratitude? Perhaps maybe that was my issue. If I take 100% ownership and say, how did I create my anger, my feelings of, dissatisfaction, a frustration with that other person? And that's when I realized that I had a show/classroom coming up, and I wrote down, I want to talk about vulnerability. No expert other than real life. I think we could all become experts on vulnerability if and when, and this is what Brene Brown says, when our capacity for wholeheartedness is greater than our willingness to be brokenhearted. That's when we will be able to embrace vulnerability. I'm going to repeat that again because that is crucial. That when my willingness to be loving is not as greater as my fear of being hurt, then I can be vulnerable. Not if, but as. So as much as I am willing to have my heart broken, I am willing to be vulnerable. And I'm going to repeat what Brene Brown says, and she is the expert of this. She says, when our capacity for wholeheartedness is greater than our willingness to be brokenhearted, that is when we will risk vulnerability. So I spewed, I emoted, I had my little pity party, but then I let it go. I thought, maybe someday they'll appreciate the things I do. And I left it at that. And then I said to myself, that'll be the last time I will show that person how much I am willing to do for them, how much I am willing to love them without any expectation. But you know what? As I said that then, and as I say it now, it was all about the ego, all about retaliation. It's all about keeping myself safe. And so how do you know that you're in your ego? Anytime that you're in discomfort, anytime you're in resistance. And so these are the four, like if you take your pulse and you say, okay, how do I know I'm in my ego? So the first thing is you're looking good. So maybe I wanted to look good. Maybe I wanted to blow that person away with my creativity and my skill or whatever. Could be. Or in control. I don't think that was it then. That was not part of my response, my anger, or my shame or vulnerability or fear. Wanting to be right. Perhaps maybe I want to be right that I love unconditionally and I need to be right about it. Maybe my unconditional love turned into ego. Who knows? And the last one is being comfortable. Comfortable, I've said this many times, will kill you, could kill you. There's a lot of people who drink themselves to death every night. They're very comfortable doing that. There are people who get beaten every night and they're very comfortable with that. So we need to get out of that. So anytime you feel that discontentment, that anger, that expectation of how somebody else should respond, now we are in our ego. And the opposite of the ego would be being in our essence, right? And so how many times have you truly done something from your essence only to feel that slap in the hand or not get that recognition or not get whatever it is that you were looking for, and all of a sudden realizing, oh, I'm exposed. I am the emperor who has no clothes. So then I started thinking, okay, how can I help me? How can I return back? How can I return back to my essence when it comes to this? Well, I have to risk brokenheartedness. I have to be willing to risk it in order for me to be vulnerable again. Will that happen? Will I be willing to do that? I don't know. Maybe I might, because I am an unconditional lover. And when I'm talking about unconditional love and accepting people and allowing yourself at risk, I am talking about people who aren't abusing of you. So if you're in an abusive relationship, you can love them too, but you need to love them from afar. I don't know if that makes sense. I don't know if that is something that you need for me to go deeper on. But if you have any comments or questions, at facebook.com/Lillian's radio show. That's where you can find me on our live shows. So if you're watching this later on YouTube, or if you're listening it on podcast, just know that you are welcome to come into the classroom to have these conversations with us. And Jason, I don't know if you're listening still, but if you have any comments that you would like to make, I would love to hear from you as well. So again, we need to be willing to risk and weigh the risks, outweigh the benefits. And so if it's neutral and you're not being abused and you're in choice, then you can make that choice. But what keeps us from being vulnerable was my next question to myself. Why would I keep myself from vulnerability? What are the prizes? What are the payoffs? And so I was thinking about perfectionism, expectation. I talked about that expectation. Like if I really dissected why I was frustrated or angry or hurt, it was because my expectation of the other person was that they would be grateful. And when they did not, and when they were not, that sounded off the story in my head, the conversation in my head, the belief about what vulnerability means to me. So vulnerability, again, is being exposed. And so when we are sitting in perfectionism and we're being critical of the other person, that would keep us from being vulnerable. Instead, we can turn it around and we can say, okay, what is it about myself that I'm seeing in that other person? That can help us return back. That would take us out of that ego mode and put us in that essence again. So instead of saying it must be perfect and this is how you behave, this is how I behave, this is the script, you can say, okay, I am going to looking within myself. And it was Carl Jung who said, who looks inside dreams. Who looks outside dreams, but whoever looks inward awakens. So it's time to look inwards and see, okay, what is it that I need to awaken within me? All those sensations. And today we posted in my Facebook page that negativity and frustration and all the things that could go wrong in your life, if you're in resistance, there is an ability to start embracing what is and looking at it with positivity. There's so much damage that could happen to your body just by being in resistance and having a temper tantrum. Yes, acknowledge. Yes, be aware of your feelings, but don't let it stay there. Shift. How can you shift? By being aware that you're in your ego and choosing your essence over your ego. I don't know if that makes sense, but I hope it does. Okay, the next thing, so taking ownership and responsibility. Like in the example that I was giving you, I was saying, okay, well, I could be upset with the other person and never choose to do this again, or I can change my expectation and not expect anything from this person, and anytime I do something from this point on, no, there will be no expectation. Do you see how that shift can protect me as well, even if I choose to be vulnerable? Then there is being authentic. Remember when I said I needed to understand why I was doing this. I knew I was doing it from a place of essence, and I was doing it from a place of unconditional love. However, I needed to understand my value, the value that I place on what I am doing, the value that I place on myself, and the value I place in others. So when I put a value on what I just did, and the other person doesn't return it, again, that is the expectation. So I need to be authentic about what I'm doing and know that it's going to be out of unconditional love. I need to be able to, if it doesn't work out the way I thought it should work out, trust the process, forgive, be quick to forgive. But again, you can forgive without trusting the individual. Trust that they will respond. Is your time worth doing this if it's not being returned? Those are the things we need to weigh. Again, when you're being vulnerable, you're saying the risk is greater than not doing it at all. That's what you're saying. I think I said that. I'm not sure if I said that correctly. I'll have to go through that through my head real quick. Okay, so what helps is setting boundaries for yourself and for others. You can say, okay, I'm going to be vulnerable here. I'm going to be the first one to say what I need. I'm going to set some boundaries. Those boundaries could be rejected, and those boundaries could be embraced, especially by you. If you're setting those boundaries, you're the upholder of these boundaries. So that value that you place on those boundaries become great. But again, the risk and the benefit must go through that process and let the risk outweigh it. You can say, I don't mind being hurt or brokenhearted because what I'm doing is coming from a place of mending, is coming from a place of essence. So setting boundaries of yourself and others, if you don't do that, it would keep you from being vulnerable because you're afraid that there's somehow going to be a violation of that. And if you don't set the expectation, how do you know how the other person is going to respond? Then the next thing that as I was dealing with my own, I thought that believing in my self-worth is very important. So what happened when I wrote this, and I created this beautiful gift for this individual, and they did not appreciate it. They basically rejected it. They did not acknowledge it as a great gift or a loving gift or a gift of time. That's my value, gift of time. Maybe they want a present, a gift, a monetary gift. But for me, what I did was I started playing tapes from the past of the times that I started to mend. I tried to mend a relationship that individual did not return. So that scenario, that screen, that the voice in my head, the story I'm telling myself is now going back to years and years and years of storytelling. Again, we've got to be rooted in our essence to know what it is, why it is you did it, and stay focused on that and stop looking for evidence that they are ungrateful or there are whatever it is that we're saying to ourselves to justify our righteous anger or justify our fear or feeling shamed or being mocked. So gratitude for the relationship, gratitude that you were able to do something kind or risk vulnerability can be the focus at that point. So first we look at perfection, then we look at authenticity, and not necessarily in this order. I'm just telling you what I went through. as I was looking at vulnerability in my life. Then I was looking at setting boundaries. How do I, you know, compartmentalize this? How do I get out of my ego? How do I, everybody is different. Nobody is the same. So whatever the process is, trust the process to get you to that willingness to be vulnerable. Your willingness to be vulnerable will allow you the opportunity for brokenheartedness. You know that as much as you're willing to be brokenhearted, that's how big your vulnerability is. Then I needed to understand what vulnerability was and what it was not. So there, again, when we first started, I shared about how I am able to see the beauty and the tears in others. But the moment I start to cry, I look at it within me as weakness. That's a myth. Vulnerability, exposure, shame, that's also a myth. If we can turn it around and see the beauty and understand the beauty of vulnerability, then we are focused on what we are trying to achieve. So then what is it? What is it not? So within ourselves, we've got to be clear that if we break down and we expose ourselves, our true feelings, say I love you first, and the other person says thank you, or we're saying something to the other individual when the other person wants to walk away, and you can say, I forgive you. But the other person now is dealing with their own righteous anger, and they walk away. And you're left there saying, wow, I'll never do that again. Well, that's part of being vulnerable, is allowing yourself to be in that place as if that was the only choice you had to make to mend that relationship or help the situation. So know that vulnerability is going to expose you to uncertainty and risk. That you need to know anytime you choose vulnerability. But that's the choice because it's coming from your essence and the need. And again, vulnerability must have courage attached to it. So when you see others be vulnerable, you go, man, wow, they did a great job. Wow, that was beautiful. And everybody's touched. But then when you do it, you go, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. I can't believe I said it. I can't believe I'm doing this. What's good for them is good for you. If you're able to see the beauty in vulnerability in others, then you owe it to yourself to embrace it within you. Period. Know what vulnerability is and know what it is not. And if you see it in others as beautiful, then see it within yourself. Because you really, that example that I'm giving you of the person who kind of not rejected, that's the story in my head. They just didn't respond to my kindness and generosity and creativity and my awesomeness. And as a result, I told myself a story. What is the story that you're telling yourself about vulnerability? That I am not worth loving? That I am not worth being noted? That I'm not worth being kind to? What is that story that always brings us to shame? And I think that if we just sit down and we just dissect it, write it down, journal about it, perhaps the expectation would change. Now, I know you guys are watching today, and there's no way that I can see you. I can see that Barbara, thank you so much. Good morning, Barbara. Where are you, or I don't know where you are watching from today on Facebook Live, but I would love to hear from all of you. Just let me know where you're from. Let me know if this is resonating within you. Are you understanding the power that vulnerability can bring to your relationships, to your personal life, even though they come with great risks? I'm not talking about the risk of trusting somebody who doesn't deserve trust. I am not talking about that. Keep in mind that trust takes a lifetime to build and a second to lose it. And it may take a lifetime to build it again. When you forgive the person, that does not give them the right, and that's why boundary setting would keep us, if we don't set boundaries, that would keep us from choosing vulnerability because it hurts too much. By confusing forgiveness and trust, it would give us the illusion that we're being vulnerable with a person who deserves that vulnerability, with a person who has allowed us that trust. Sometimes you got to do it anyway, even if they have not given you that trust. But being able to say the first one, to say, will you forgive me? It's not just about forgiving the other person. It could be about your own vulnerability or your own forgiveness. Oh, and you are from Australia, Barbara. Thank you so much for watching today. And for those of you, because I know there's more, love to hear from you as well. And so the perspective of vulnerability, that perspective that you have in others, when you're looking at others shine up and take a stand and say, hi, I'm an alcoholic. And everybody goes, whoa, that took a lot of courage. But then out of your mouth will not come out, I'm an alcoholic, because you fear rejection. But what if when you stand up and say, I'm an alcoholic, or I am a food addict, or I am addicted to shopping, or I am unfaithful, or I am not being honest, and truly take a stand with courage in your essence to say these things. Be prepared to love yourself, even if your expectation is that others will love you. Do it because you will love yourself more. To be able to take the lie, to be able to remove your ego. And again, the ego, you know you're in your ego when you're trying to look good, you're trying to stay comfortable, you're trying to be right, and you are comfortable. Did I say comfortable? Looking good, in control, and being right. I want to be right so bad about this that I don't care if our relationship suffers. That is the opposite of vulnerability. The dialogue between two people would be, I know that this is like outside of my comfort zone. And perhaps I don't want to expose the secret that I have, but I must share with you whatever you need to share. Say it out of love, saying it out of love for the other person, love for self. Because any time that you're dragging a lie with you, your body knows it, and it will respond. It will know that it's not in sync with your spirit, and it'll break down. That is the anatomy of dis-ease. So vulnerability, if you choose that path, you're also choosing potentially to be brokenhearted. But when we break down, the opposite of breakdown is breakthrough. And the benefits of that, have you ever had an argument with your spouse or your best friend, And there was a moment of silence where there wasn't communication between the two parties, or a group that broke down because one person wanted to take this direction, the other person wanted to take this other direction. Hey, listen, it happened in religion, it's happened with bands, it's happened with businesses. But what comes from it is a new creation that if you were to come together and say, you know what, this needed to happen, so this could also come out of the ashes. You can still communicate love for one another, even through the tears, even through the disappointments, even through the arguments and the not seeing clearly. So understanding and having a perspective of what truly vulnerability is and what and how it could benefit, that would be like a little plan, just a plan. Just recent, well, gosh, one of the first memes I ever did, some of the quotes that I've come up with, and when people say I love you, I always say I love you more. And I don't say that without thinking. I really say it because I do. And one day, my niece said to me, Aunt Lily, well, they call me Al because I sign everything L, and then for my nieces and nephew, I put an AL. So she said, Al, love is not a competition. And I thought, because I said, love is a competition. Whoever loves the most wins. And that's when she said, Al, love isn't a competition. And I started thinking about it, and maybe it's not a competition, but then whoever loves the most, everybody wins. Again, if somebody is abusing you, taking advantage of you, again, you have to address your self-value and your self-worth. You can still love the person, especially if you don't trust them, you can love them from afar. Forgiveness is important for you. Forgiveness is important for you. Buddha said that if you choose not to forgive, that or decide to stay angry with the other person, now I'm paraphrasing, is like drinking poison, expecting the other person to die. It is so important that you become clear that you are from your essence, you're coming from your essence. And love, as if it were a competition and you were in the Olympic team wanting to get gold. But even within that unconditional love, there must be a love for self that you say, I love you enough to love you from afar because I love me more. I love you, but I love me more in the sense that what you're doing to me is not acceptable. But you can still love from afar and wish them love and peace and joy and unexpected abundance until you receive it yourself. That's the trick of forgiveness. If you wish somebody harm, no matter what it is, it's going to come back to you. So if you wish somebody well, that too will come back to you. And in the process of wishing them love and peace and joy, that's my closing. I wish you love, peace, joy, and unexpected abundance. And as I do that, I'm also blessing myself. Not only am I blessing you, people I know, people I don't know, people that have harmed me, people who have never even think about it. But that is the start of the forgiveness process, is putting that person there and saying, I may not like it right now, and I'm not condoning their behavior, but I need to forgive them for myself, for my own health, for my own wellness and my well-being. So it takes for you, when you're being vulnerable, it's showing up in your essence. Now, I'm going to take a little moment here and I'm going to look and see. Yes, Barbara, sometimes that is exactly what happened to me. The response was not positive. So the question is, I have opened up to people, but the response hasn't always been positive. Sometimes it's better to keep that secret to yourself. That is what I'm talking about. That vulnerability allows you to risk. Again, but are you trusting the wrong people? Is there value? Is this a person who matters? There are people who criticize whatever I'm doing on YouTube, or criticize the way I eat, or criticize, but you know what? I may not even know their name. They're not showing up. They're not doing what I'm doing. They're not exposing. Me doing this show / classroom is exposing me to being criticized by so many people that I don't even know. I write them off because they really don't matter in my life. Now, if you want to give somebody constructive feedback, and I am at fault at this, I am sometimes have to learn the hard way. I have to learn the hard way that sometimes my opinion doesn't matter. Sometimes it is okay. But for the sake of the relationship, if it's keeping it, when we decide to be vulnerable, it will allow us an opportunity to break down whatever is broken already and lift up and build up, because what comes after breakdown is breakthrough. So yes, it may be uncomfortable, but we gain so much. We gain the learning that the relationship can be better. How many times have you wanted to walk away from someone that you're committed to because you don't want to be vulnerable? That relationship matters. And if you are vulnerable and it falls flat, at least you loved, at least you risked. And the benefits far outweigh the shame, the fear. Again, the rejection. What is the story in our head about that rejection? Perhaps when we were little and we broke something and we were yelled at, and we, or we did something where we thought we were doing something good and we were yelled at. Perhaps maybe that's where our belief, and I shared this story not too long ago, because I was so proud of my vision board, and in my vision board there is a little, and after we finished the podcast, and I'll show it to you for those of you who are watching on Facebook. I'll show it to you if you remind me, that there was a word and it said believe. And it dawned on me after all this time, I'm looking at this believe, and I had not seen that the I and the E were red. Everything was white, but the I and the E. And then all I kept seeing when I was looking at my vision board was be live. That's what I thought. I saw lie. We have lies in our belief system that do not support us anymore. What is the lie in your belief? And once I realized that I was frustrated with my vision board, that I wanted it to be now, and I wanted it to be by a certain date, and I wanted to be, a certain way. And then that's when I saw the lie in the belief. And by the way, this was divine inspiration, because I was able to see it. It really bothered me until I got a believe that was all white. I cut it out, I glued it, and I pasted it, I Mod Podged it, and now all I see is believe. But I had to dig into what the lie was about whatever it was, whether it was my vision, worthiness, my own worthiness to achieve those dreams that I want. So I had to be vulnerable to myself. And by being vulnerable by myself, I was able to mend that brokenheartedness within me that comes from my childhood. No fault. And that's why it's important to go to whenyouneedafriend.com and check out my 100% responsibility page. And while I'm at it, I must tell you about my sponsors. Those sponsors who are risking being vulnerable with this classroom, because not that many people are speaking like I speak. You can't turn on the television and watch a show where they're talking about that it's okay and safe to be vulnerable. That you have to create for yourself by what you're saying to yourself about vulnerability. What is that lie that we tell ourselves about vulnerability? So I want to take a moment to thank my sponsors, to thank you for going to whenyouneedafriend.com to continue this conversation, to be a part of this movement of 100% ownership of what is, not recreating the wheel it was not. And so I want to ask you to subscribe. And while you're at whenyouneedafriend.com, like me, follow me at Lillian at whenyouneedafriend.com. That would be that's Lily at whenyouneedafriend.com. That's my email if you want to get a hold of me. But facebook.com/Lillian's radio show, Lillian McDermott on Instagram, Twitter is Lillian MCD. I got all those before this became a classroom. Or else it would be the classroom. If I could change it, it would be. But it is what it is. And so while you're there, check out all the different lessons that have been shared by the teachers in the classroom. And also click on the YouTube channel, subscribe there, check out all the videos, on and off the air conversations. And keep in mind, this used to be a radio show, and now we're strictly doing internet, and we're promoting. So I need your help. I need your help to become a sponsor of the classroom. Enrolled student. We also have. Go there and you can help with the cost of the class. And we have the affordable first alternative care, and they are just absolutely wonderful for $35 a month, though for the entire household. So click on it on my page. And then there's also Keep Me Safe Organic beauty products. If you mention Lily 10, you will get 10% off your entire purchase. We also have the pharmacy in Merritt Island, Dr. Grable, who is functional, holistic, alternative in Jacksonville area, Jacksonville Beach area. But people come from all over to learn the root cause with Dr. Grable. The pharmacy in Merritt Island, mention my name, say Lily sent you, and get 20% off your first order. Live Longer Medical, who's just taken a stand with me. We just did a class with Lisa Geyer yesterday. And so these are the people, the groups, the organization, Liberty Health Share at libertyhealthshare.org, Live Longer Medical, livelongermedical.org. These are all people that are being vulnerable, risking doing something different. So I want to encourage you to support them the way they're supporting the classroom. And you yourself can become an enrolled student and figure out different ways that you can support this format. Will you do that? Will you choose to be vulnerable? Okay, so yes, I would love to share my vision board, but you see, that when I created that vision board, I was able to be vulnerable to myself. So Barbara said she wants to look at my vision board, and I did show, and I will show you that the belief, and that blew me away. That even in our belief, there could be lies. The lie we made up a long time ago about vulnerability, that I'd rather be alone than tell that person I love them first. Is that the language you're sharing with yourself? You know, we will feel pain and we will feel joy, but that's only if we allow ourselves to be vulnerable. If we are protecting ourselves, then we can never, let me repeat that. If we are keeping ourselves from pain, then we're keeping ourselves from true joy. Does that make sense to you? For those of you who are watching and that will watch later on, the benefits of being vulnerable far outweigh the risks. But if you're not willing to be brokenhearted, then you're not willing to be vulnerable. And that means that in order to avoid pain, you will numb yourself from true joy. That right there is a huge price. How do you know the victory? Unless there's been a little battle. How do you know something will be successful? Unless you're willing to fail. And by the way, failure is not real. That's the lie. It's an opportunity for growth. Mistakes, opportunities for growth. Once we reshape, once we reformat what we believe and identify the lie in our belief, then we will be freed up to live a life much greater because we will set foot outside our comfort zone. So yes, it may be hurt. You may get hurt. No, let me rephrase that. You will get hurt. But if you don't risk the pain, you will risk true joy. Think about that. Laughter, love, true, deeper love, deep compassion. Vulnerability is the gateway, and gratitude is what opens every door. That takes us from our ego, that takes us from, that puts us back into our essence. And so I want to encourage all of you that are watching today, that are being very quiet. Let me know, does this make sense? Will you risk? And again, I love the quote from the movie We Bought a Zoo. It only takes 20 seconds of courage to take the first step. Will you take the first step towards your ego? Will you take the first step towards your essence? Your essence will open the door to vulnerability. And at least, if you love and lose, at least you loved. But if you don't choose to love at all, or choose to be vulnerable, then you'll never know. You might live in regret. So reformatting what vulnerability is and what it's not, what you're willing to do, what you're not willing to do, who is trusting and who's not, who are you willing to forgive and who are you not willing to trust. So remember, forgiveness. Oh my God, always be willing to forgive, always, because that is the step that will take you closer to healing, health, out of depression. When the body is not aligned with the essence, when your mind and your essence and your body are not aligned, that's the beginning of dis-ease. What are you willing to do to be vulnerable enough, to risk enough, to say, not my body, not here, not now. I choose vulnerability. Will you? I hope you do. Please remember, we're going to continue our conversation. If you're listening on the podcast, please like, share, let people know that there is another way, another way, another way. Keep looking for it until you discover the true essence and vulnerability. Please remember, I'll be right here waiting for you worldwide at whenyounneedafriend.com. This is Lillian McDermott wishing you love, peace, joy, and unexpected abundance. Make it the best day ever. We're going to continue our conversation.
The opinions and advice expressed on the Lillian McDermott radio show are intended for the individual callers and guests on the program and are presented to our wider audience solely for general educational purposes. Please act responsibly and consult personally with your own medical, psychological, or nutritional expert before taking any steps to improve your life.
Okay, I love all the comments, Barbara. Thank you so much. And I want to hear from all of you as well. I love your vulnerability. Now, forgiveness. I have done so many lessons in forgiveness. I want to encourage you to become a subscriber. If you're not a subscriber, all of you to become a subscriber. I've done conversations with Jason Stevenson about forgiveness and truly forgiving. I have done, conversations or had lessons, but they all come from a place of knowing. You can't expect anyone to forgive you unless you're willing to forgive. And that was the first time I will share my lesson. I've always been quicker to forgive than most and willing to love. And I learned that from my family. And whether your family is hard to love or not is not the point. Whether a person is hard to love or not, maybe they've hurt you, is not the point. What we learned from that lesson becomes our greatest gift. So my sister had invited me to Bible study for many, many, many years. And finally I got to the point where I said yes. It had been 3 years and I started this process. And I thought I knew a lot about the Bible until I went to this class and I realized I graduated and I still don't know anything about the Bible. And so at the time, I thought I knew a lot until I started studying it and realized, man, I'm looking for perfection in the Bible, all the saints, and they were so flawed, and I was so frustrated, and all the different things that I would learn from this experience. And then we had this woman, her name is Sandy. It was Bible Study Fellowship, and they have Bible Study Fellowship International, and that's where I'm a graduate of. And I remember Sandy, who was our facilitator, our leader, she said one time, and I don't know if she said it one time or many times, but she said, how we forgive on earth is how we will be forgiven in heaven. That pierced my heart. I'm going to say that again. Hey, Victoria, how are you? I was just going to say, where have you been? I'm glad you're here. So that was the question, or that was the statement that pierced my heart. I'm going to say it again. Sandy said, how we forgive on earth and how we forgive others on earth. When we stand in front of the judgment, and I believe that God is a just God, a loving God, so that process is going to be different than some people. Some people think of fire and brimstone, God's not going to forgive you, and and then all hell breaks loose. I don't believe that's my God. My God is forgiving, the unconditional, like the best unconditional lover ever. But I must be aware of my forgiveness, my needing to be forgiven, and my willingness to forgive. So I remember Sandy's statement, the way we forgive others on earth will be the way that we will be judged and forgiven in heaven. I just had to sit back a little bit, and that's all I heard after that. I couldn't hear anything else. And I had to do an examination of conscience, because when I was a kid, I was so quick to forgive, so quick to forgive. But as I got older, I had been hurt so many different times that I didn't understand I wasn't forgiving. I thought I had forgiven, but I really hadn't, because I still remembered the person with anger and resentment. I still could relive the feeling over and over and over again when I recalled the story. You know you've forgiven when you can tell the story without all the emotion. You can tell the story, not numbing, but not without the emotion. You're telling the story to help somebody, to share your victory over a hard heart. So if the problem is you're not able to forgive, then you must ask the question, if you were the one who needed forgiveness, and you were truly repentant, not remorseful, but repentant, and you've turned the other way, and you've seen that, but someone chooses not to forgive you, how does that sit with you? How does it sit with you and all of us, not just you? How does it sit with you to know that your lack of forgiveness is permission for somebody else not to forgive you? That is the start. That awareness. And like I said, the quote earlier from Carl Jung, who looks outside dreams, who looks within awakens. So if you want to be vulnerable, that's a great start. Knowing it doesn't change what they did. It doesn't change that you trust them. But forgiveness is for you. Forgiveness, lack of forgiveness, will put your spirit out of alignment with your body and your essence and your mind. That alignment will cause that memory to implant itself in a healing center, other people call chakras, in your body, and it will manifest into disease. How many of us have to go through a catastrophic issue in order to be willing to change their life? So, to me, if you choose, or anyone who chooses not to forgive, then must sit with, whether it's your parents, your family, a friend, someone who abused you, if you choose not to forgive and they die tomorrow, would you be okay with the way it was left? Would you choose, and I'm not, and again, let me rephrase this. If somebody random hurt you, or someone who loved you hurt you, and you're unwilling to forgive that person, you're inwardly imploding. You're going to make yourself sick. And it'll manifest in symptoms, because the mind will say to the spirit, or the spirit will say to the, okay, let's just say spirit and mind. The spirit will say to the mind, we need to deal with this. And the mind goes, nah, I don't want to be vulnerable. I don't want to forgive. They don't deserve it. And then the spirit says, but you deserve it. The mind says, no, I don't want to. It's too painful. They don't deserve it. And then the body goes, you guys need to deal with something. Or the spirit, the brain goes, yeah, you guys need to deal with something. The spirit saying you need to deal with something here. And it's painful. So then the body goes, here, let me help you out. I'm going to give you backache, or a thyroid condition, or an autoimmune condition, or sleeplessness. Your hair will fall out. Whatever it is. If you are not willing to forgive, start listening to your body, and your body will say, well, you gained weight, or you're not eating well, you're not sleeping well, you're drinking too much, you're numbing too much, you're needing too much Tylenol, you're not drinking enough water. Whatever it is, boom, the body will say, what's happening to your spirit needs to match what your mind is saying. The mind is saying, I am not going to forgive because it's too painful. Well, the body knows you need to deal with pain, so it'll give you pain. Don't wait. Forgiveness is for you. It's for you. It will set you free. And if you think that lack of forgiveness is a badge of honor, then seriously consider what it would be like to set it free. My best advice for anyone to not want to forgive, and I've done this exercise, trust me, I've done it so many times. This is why I'm sharing with you and I'm begging with you to please consider starting the process of forgiveness. And this is how you do it. You go to whenyouneedafriend.com, you go to my responsibility page, and there's 4 little questions that you can answer. Now, responsibility has bum rap, and what responsibility is not is blame, shame, fault, or duty. That it is not. Just like vulnerability is not exposure or shame or fear, all those things that lie in our belief. Let me see if I can talk and show you the picture. Anyway, so there are 4 questions that you answer as if it is what it is. It is what it is. And so with that in mind, you ask, how did I create it? Without blame, shame, or fault. It's just, it is what it is. And there's an example in that page so that you would be able to see it. So it is what it is. And then the next question is, what are the gifts and lessons? What did you learn from this? All good lessons. I learned not to do that again. Whatever it is. Then the third question is, what's going to be different now that you know how you created it? Because we are the co-creators of our life. And so what's going to be different now that you know how you created it and the gifts and lessons? Because there's always blessing. May come in an ugly package, but there's always a blessing in every circumstance. And it could be the blessing of knowing a person in your life, even if it was taken too soon. So when you look at what's going to be different, again, that's the value that I talked about earlier. Figure out how. You're not going to repeat this again. You're going to learn from it. You're going to do something different. And then the 4th question, taking ownership, is how am I going to use this for the greater good? Like I used the example of Mike trying to be, like a loving, super wonderful person, and it wasn't received in the way that I thought. Is the issue that person or the issue my expectation? Again, how did I create it? What are the gifts and lessons? What's going to be different? And how can I use this for the greater good? I just did. Hopefully, my experience, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So you can do this. Take a journal, and on the top of the page, write one thing someone ever did to you that you're unwilling to forgive. Turn the page, put another one, keep doing that until you just dump everything out of you. Then you start answering the questions as you are the creator, you are the co-creator. How did I create it? What are the gifts and lessons? What's going to be different? And finally, how am I going to use this to help somebody else through their journey that they're just beginning their journey? And I don't know if that made sense. It will set you free, right, Victoria? That is so true. You think you're liberating somebody else, but then your body starts responding. It says, oh, wow, I just took that weight off of me. So the way to start is by recalling the situation and blessing it. Blessing it with love, with peace, with joy, with abundance. The people that have hurt you, wish them well, because all of that is going to come back to you. Oh, yeah, I promise you. I come from a place of knowing. I know what it feels like when you are withholding love, when you are withholding forgiveness. I am worth more than that. You are worth more than that. So, I hope this has helped. I hope this makes sense. And I hope I still have all of you watching. And for those of you who are going to watch later on, please share, like, thank, my sponsors. Figure out different ways that you can support my sponsors the way they are supporting us. Help this classroom grow, whether it's by becoming an enrolled student and helping out monthly, financially, or with your promotion. If you don't have the money to help support, you can help with promotion, with encouragement, whatever it is. Just know that everything we do is for the greater good. Now I'm going to say goodbye. I hope. Okay, so what this is, thank you. I can't read this. Let me see. It's so small. Thank you. I will give it. You will? Awesome. Awesome. Just know that this is for you. I love Buddha's quote, which is, there are a couple of them that really pierced my heart. One of them is, I already shared it, which is, lack of forgiveness or unwillingness to forgive or hold a grudge is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. And the other quote I want to share with you is that it's this one I heard from Wayne Dyer. It's not the snake bite that kills you. It's the venom that runs through your blood. And that venom causes dis-ease. And I wish all of you health, wealth, abundance, and joy, true joy, so that if you allow yourself to experience the pain, then you will be able to experience true joy. You're welcome, Barbara. I hope this does help, and I hope that all of you choose vulnerability over fear. And all you need is 20 seconds of courage. We'll see you and love you all. We'll see you soon. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking about the excuses that we give ourselves to keep ourselves from being healthy. With Dr. David Freeman. So I hope you join us tomorrow at the same time. We'll see you. Thank you for watching. Okay, let me see if I can do this. Yes, I can. I can do it. I can do all things because I know who lives in me. Bye. And that goes for you too, YouTubers. I want you to share, like, promote, help me grow this message of unconditional love. The world will tell you, get them. But I will say, that will hurt you. See ya. Bye.